All right, you all. Well, thank you so much for attending our summer session for Urban Forestry Commission. As chair of Urban Forestry Commission, I officially call this meeting to order. I will now turn things over to our secretary and assistant to do a roll call.
Wonderful. We have Xavier Bay.
Present.
We have Jose Hernandez.
Present.
Bernie Jackson.
Present.
Mikhail John Baptiste. Not present. Jennifer Kipp.
Present.
Dan Lehman.
Present.
Samir Malone. Present. Ray Oleski.
Present.
Tom Schreiber. Not present. Jenny Spencer.
Present.
Rick Skotowski. Not present. Roger Tokars. Not present. Zernberg. Present. And we have 2 vacant positions.
Thank you so much. We officially have quorum.
Right.
All right. Well, I wanted to just do a few welcome remarks, and then, of course, we'll go into the agenda again. Apologies for the delay. We were just trying to get a few things up and running. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, before we started camera, today we will not officially be live streaming our commission meeting. As opposed, we are working with TV20 to record the session and have posted on our website, which will be accessible after today's session. And again, as always, welcome to our commission meeting for our summer session. I want to say, we have one of our commissioners show. As always, I want to say thank you so much, first and foremost, to our commissioners for showing and being active participants in commission as always. And also thanks to all of our public guests who showed up and participated in our commission sessions. And the Urban Forestry Commission stands as a beacon of guidance dedicated to advising the mayor and city council on policy and regulations that enhance our urban tree canopy and vibrancy of our neighborhoods. As outlined in our mission, we are committed in providing strategic advice to implement best practices, foster the growth and maintenance of Cleveland's urban tree canopy. Under the purview of UFC, our duties encompass a wide array of responsibilities, including assisting and adopting in the urban forestry management plan, maintaining a comprehensive inventory of trees, offering recommendations for policy and plans, and monitoring the implementation of citywide initiatives. Together, we aim to revitalize our city's urban tree canopy. And we're really excited. I think we have a very well prepared agenda today, a wide, robust topics for us to really have dialogue and chew on today. So I'm really excited to get things kicked off. And before we do that, I'm going to transition back over again to Secretary Zaremba to do an approval of the minutes.
All right. I didn't receive any email comments or revisions to the minutes. Just received some requests for the agenda. Just want to officially approve the minutes and make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second. All in favor of approving minutes from last commission's meeting?
Aye.
All right.
Would the chair recognize the commissioner already?
Yes, absolutely. My apologies, Commissioner Tokars. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. All right, so moving on to unfinished business. I know during our last session, we had a bit of deliberation towards the back end of our meeting about response to public comment. So I thought that this would be a really great opportunity for us to talk about our processes. As many of you all know, our existing structure follows very similar to city council, which I'll talk a little bit about later on, but just wanted to take a little bit of time to highlight our existing process. So our current process for responding to public comment is following city council. The public comment is introduced to the body and acknowledged as public record. Now from there, we are trying to develop a process because we're trying to develop a process for giving some type of feedback to public comment. We recognize that there is a great deal of value in being able to respond directly to public comment. So this is a process that we are recommending, and of course are looking to get feedback on our fellow commissioners on any other revisions to this process that can be offered. So first, in January, we identified this potential process to evaluate comments. And the two that fall underneath this bucket are public comments that bring up any potential hazard or concern as best addressed by urban forestry management in the form of a work order request. or an idea that is issued or raised that can be viewed holistically by the body of Urban Forestry Commission. One of the additional caveats to that we wanted to add was taking the executive committee of Urban Forestry Commission and identifying those comments that also may even require some additional response from our various subcommittees, whether it be budget, policy, or maintenance, in which we saw some comments that we shifted over to you all for response this week. But we're really interested, again, as a newer commission. Of course, we've been in existence for about a year, but still developing processes, looking for the best way to both manage having public comments that are just for the sake of public record, but then also having opportunities to respond to those public comments when appropriate. And this outlined here as our process here on our slide deck. Did anybody want to give any comment or feedback on existing process or even recommendation? Again, this can continue to be workshop out of session.
I have a couple of questions. Thanks for bringing this forward. I appreciate the explanation that was given about sometimes comment could be related to operations and not necessarily policy. Where would that fall in this flow chart? If it's just something that needs to be referred for operational.
Yep. So once we receive public comment, when USC convenes in between our meetings to kind of course, have our regular meetings and then also the meetings that we set for agenda making for a commission, that's when we take a chance to evaluate the comments and make recommendation as to whether or not we need to respond to that more formally or if this is just a public record. So from there, essentially our executive committee is functioning as like the filtered decision making process as to if this is being flagged as like a work order issue. Then we coordinate with Jen to ensure that this is both coordinated and responded to.
And then a follow-up question, I think it would be beneficial to have just some sort of record of that triage process of this comment was not responded to because it's outside of the scope, but just at least acknowledging the intake of the comment.
Absolutely.
And then my final question would be, and then where do we do that? I know that there was on the website a way to view online intake.
Yes, there's. There's a two-process response to your first question. Existing right now, basically how we're triaging those comments is we have a spreadsheet that we then are able to evaluate whether or not that question really do need comment in the spreadsheet, whether this needs to be addressed directly from either the Jen or subcommittee groups, essentially the chairs of the subcommittee. And then when it comes to the actual public record of the questions, they are listed online on our Forestry Commission website. That is open and transparent to the public, including
where the comment went after it was.
So that is also something, and I would thank you so much for providing that recommendation as a potential, because we do not have that as a stands right now publicly acknowledging whether or not this question has been responded to. So we can definitely integrate that. I think we're extremely malleable as to how we're doing this public comment process. I know that we have our traditional structure of how council and other commissions typically respond to or lack thereof, but we really see the value in being able to provide a right response. So that is a great issue.
Something we're considering.
Yeah.
And then my last question would be, it says we will provide a public response during quarterly meeting. Is that in writing? Is it verbal? So what is the protocol? Oh, that's no. Let's see. Have response by next quarterly meeting. So are responses to be delivered verbally during the meeting? Are they to be delivered in writing? Or
so in the case that we have a public comment that we have issued a formal response to, then that formal response will then be read aloud as an acknowledgement. But for those that were just a public comment, a comment for the public record, there will not be a formal because there is a response. But again, still refining the process and still figuring out what works best.
Could I just ask a question on that, Chair? So I just want to make sure that I'm taking accurate notes. So just following what we have on the slide is that if the executive committee determines that this particular public comment warrants a formal response from the commission, then we would draft a response in writing to the commenter, and then we would follow up with reading our response at the next commission meeting. Is that correct? Oh, thank you, Chair.
Okay, are there any other questions about our public comment process?
I would just add, based on that, I think it's worth clarifying, have written response, so the commenter understands that they would be receiving a written response.
Yes.
And then the verbal as well, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll definitely make note of that, and make that revision in the process.
Are we still, again, just another point to clarify, are we still relying on like the executive committee to receive the public comment and determine if it warrants a response?
Absolutely. So the executive committee essentially functions as the first pass through of public comment to acknowledge whether or not it needs a response, or directly from yourself, or from our subcommittee members, or from the body as a whole.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, if we don't have any other questions around processes, I would love to jump down to our next line item. So as you all know, over the last couple of months, we've been extensively looking for a youth resident to represent here on Urban Forestry Commission. So initially when we met during our last session, I believe in April, we mentioned that we had a application process that was open to the end of May. Well, we decided during that meeting that we were going to extend that until June 17th to accommodate students in their school schedule, and making sure that we left enough space for them to apply for this position after the school year ended. And so just to read a little bit about our ordinance is outlined in the relevant city ordinance 163-02. The commission has created an opportunity to include a youth representative between the ages of 11 and 17 who have the permission of their parent or legal guardian to participate. So we're really excited to share that after extending the deadline to June 17th for our potential youth commissioner application, we now have 6 active applications and are coordinating 4 interviews with youth applicants right now. So Jim and I are going to be meeting with them, co-chair, and I are going to be meeting with them over the next 2 days to interview our 4 applicants and define who we're going to move forward with, who is going to be our youth representative on commission. I'm very excited about this opportunity. We have a really great batch of students who are well versed in environmental stewardship through both their schoolwork and their extracurricular activities. So I know whoever we choose is going to be a phenomenal addition to the commission.
Chair Malone, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So is the youth member, in accordance with our rules and regulations, is the youth member appointed by the mayor or council? Do we know?
I believe it's on the record slide.
Oh, there it is.
Mayoral. Yeah.
Mayoral. So is there more of a process in terms of selecting and
Yes.
ultimately approving?
Yes, so what we'll do is we'll make our selection and recommendation for the student to the mayor's office, who will then go through with the appointment process. So we're hoping, given the timeline that we have right now, that we'll have our new youth appointee onboarded and able to join us during our next session in October. Great.
Yeah.
Very exciting. And I know that they are going to be well received within this very warm commission and learn a lot from all of the really great folks at this table. Are there any questions that we have about our youth appointee recommendation?
Comments, questions?
All right. Well, with that being said, as an update on all of our old business, I'd like for us to transition over to new business. So I will turn things over to Vice Chair Kip, who will be providing an update on the U.S. Forest Service.
All right, thank you, Chair Malone. And just a quick update on the agenda. So Secretary Zaremba was originally going to take this, and then we just kind of made a last minute decision at Luke Easter Park that I would have the privilege of making this announcement and this update for the commission. We were at Luke Easter Park for the kickoff of the Urban Forestry, the Community Forestry Corps. It's Samira, Chair Malone, and Secretary Zaramba had so much behind the scenes work. I give you guys so much credit for bringing that all together, bringing a whole bunch of people together for this event. And then of course Mayor Bibb was there. We had Undersecretary Wilkes was there, and some folks from his office as well. So, and Riddle, of course, I have to make sure that I include Riddle, and Student Conservation Association. Okay, thank you. What would I do without the help from my colleagues? So Mayor Bibb made this announcement just, I guess, a few hours ago, that the U.S. Forest Service has awarded the city of Cleveland $3.4 million in IRA grant dollars from the Biden and Harris administration that were part of the Inflation Reduction Act, part of the $1.4 billion that was announced last year, correct? Yeah. So, thank you. To support community urban forestry, and so we do have the city of Cleveland is going to be the recipient of about 90% of the funding, and then we also have some other really key partners and stakeholders that are a part of the Cleveland Tree Coalition who are also going to receive some of the funding as well. So this is incredibly exciting. This is like, game-changing, funding for urban forestry in the city of Cleveland. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who made that possible. Many of them are in this room, and many of them are not. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, in addition to touching on that, as you all know, the City of Cleveland, in partnership with the Coalition, last year put forth an application to the U.S. Forest Service, and of course, unfortunately, did not receive funds. But due to the steadfast lobbying, both of our, of course, local administration, but as well as our congressional partners and Senate, we were able to really advocate to the U.S. Forest Service to make an investment here in Cleveland, where the work and the real impact really needs to be seen. So we're really excited about all of the lobbying efforts that really push forth. Cleveland did not take no for an answer at all when it came to that funding. And so the result of that is us having a significant pledge to be able to help support our municipal function of urban forestry, which I know this is what we all as commissioners are advocating for on a daily basis. So I share a great deal of excitement alongside all of you all for this opportunity for us, with this catalytic opportunity to have this flush of money from the U.S. Forest Service.
Secretary Zaramba, do you want to add anything?
To everyone for participating throughout the process. Excited to see the fruits of that.
Well, I want to specifically though thank Secretary Zaramba, because the application to the U.S. Forest Service has, how many hours have you spent on it? A lot of hours. So I mean, it's I couldn't do it without your help and the help of other people in the Office of Sustainability. So just want to recognize all of your hard work on the application. And thank you, Chair Malone, for all of your also hard work. And you're part of the Cleveland Didn't Take No for an Answer group. So thank you for that. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Well, thank you. Secretary Zaramba, for all the work that you did, all the leadership work you took in putting together what was, I know, a great application to the result of this having this amazing. All right. Well, if there aren't any comments, then
Any comments, questions on the?
I think we need to do a round of applause.
Oh, okay.
This is huge.
It's you.
Really big day.
Yes, it's a big day.
I mean, the fact that we are within 2 hours of this major announcement and that we get to be part of it as a commission this afternoon is incredibly exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding that a formal press release will be going out tomorrow, so the public will. Unfortunately, we're not live streaming, so we can't. Other than those who are here in the audience, no one knows about, or not that many people know about it yet. But
right.
It'll be released in more detail tomorrow publicly. And I know that I can speak for myself as a commissioner. I'll look forward to learning about in more detail about the proposed uses for the funds and I think that's an exciting aspect as well. So I don't know if anything can be shared now. If not, look forward to that aspect as well.
Absolutely. I know that there's still firming up details and there will be far more details in the more formalized press release, but we have a lot to chew on as a commission. So this is very exciting to have this funding opportunity. It's really going to bridge a lot of the gaps and challenges in terms of just like budgetary function of forestry, and I know that paired with the other kind of exciting things that we have going on in terms of, just transition and capacity support around forestry right now. This is the cherry on top of a Sunday we can wait for.
That's a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, that is for sure.
Wow.
All right. Well, do we have any other comments about the U.S. Forest Service budget? All right. Well, if you don't, I would love to open up the floor to introduce our esteemed guest today. We have Matt Lyden coming to visit us here today from our Ohio State Forestry program. We work very closely with our state agency, so we're really excited to have you here today to introduce you to the great folks of Commission as a whole, which many of us have had the chance to meet because we have participated in various activities and workshops. But yes, we welcome you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's quite an announcement to follow up here. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
I was asked to come here today just to kind of introduce myself and what it is that I do. So my name's Matt Lyden, and I'm a regional urban forester for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry. And kind of what I do is several things for counties from Erie all the way to Ashtabula, and Cleveland happens to be one of the cities I work with quite a bit. So the first thing I do is just general direct assistance. So that's anything to do with public trees. I can be called in and give an opinion and work with the city to solve problems, make solutions and do some planning. The other thing I do is we have a grant assistance program. So along with the other states, we received IRA money, and we have been in the process of awarding that. So that's one of them. And then we also have a urban canopy restoration grant that typically goes out once a year. And that's a tree planting grant. So that's a popular one that cities also apply for. But then along with the grant program, we also just do general information facilitation. So that could be, any threats and pressures to the urban forest. We also do the Tree City Awards. So you can see in that photo there, that's Jen and I at the Tree City Awards, which Cleveland is. And then,
mention your colleague?
oh yeah, and that's my assistant chief for our division, Greg Guess. And then we also provide training opportunities. So I think almost everyone at this table is going through Tree Commission Academy, which is a class where we teach how the Tree Commission should function and what things should be done. And then we also do other stuff like young tree training classes, planting classes, and just other basic stuff like that.
Important stuff.
Yeah, important stuff. Definitely.
Are you coming to train the students for the summer program?
I did like a leader training.
Okay.
And then I think we still have to nail down the other dates there.
Okay. All right.
I was going to say, Matt, did you want to talk a little bit about the grant function of ODNR and how that supported some of the projects and initiatives here in Cleveland?
Yeah, so the last one we just had was an urban canopy restoration grant, right? So essentially what that is a city will apply for the grant, they'll get awarded a certain amount, and then this specific one was planting. So what you guys ended up doing was planting. Do you remember how many trees it was? A lot. A decent amount.
Well, we baby stepped into
yeah.
Yes.
And then we
have to prove ourselves.
Right.
Yes.
But then, so we have the trees are planted, then I come out and inspect the trees to make sure they're all planted correctly, and then, you know, I just support along the way. So anything you need, I'm here for.
Right, and that, I think that was, it was 40 trees, but again, just to say, like, that was the first grant that, I've been with the city for 11 years, and I think that was the first direct grant for urban forestry from ODNR.
Okay.
So, and-
Yeah, and then
yeah,
we have another one that just kind of
yep,
opened up here.
right,
So that one specifically is going to be for young tree training. And, you know, we're still in the very beginning stages of that one, but
Mhm.
looking forward to doing that one too.
Me too. I'm looking forward to getting some young trees trained.
Oh, yeah.
And in addition to supporting the city of Cleveland, I know ODNR has been really active, especially through you all's pool of grant funding and supporting some of the grants propped up, such as the Land Conservancy and other partners of the coalition. So there's really strategic concentrated investment that you guys are seeing here in Cleveland as a byproduct of our relationship with ODNR.
Definitely.
All right, well, thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
And I just want, can I just add something as well, just to share? So, Matt is a great resource, and I do have to say you have really big shoes to fill,
It's true.
right? And you have been doing an outstanding job.
Thank you.
So, and everybody, we won't name who was the big shoes, but I think that you've done a fantastic job, and I really enjoy working with you. And then I just, I'll use Matt for that subject matter expertise. So like our spotted lanternfly communication, we're getting a lot more calls about spotted lanternfly. And so I just want to make sure that our communication to residents is up to par. And so I'll have Matt put eyes on that. So it's definitely a resource for me. We planted, you selected Cleveland.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so this is our 75th year as the Department of Natural Resources. So to celebrate, we planted a tree in all of the counties. So I was able to collaborate with Jen in the city and plant one of our 75th anniversary trees here in Rockefeller Park.
You chose Cleveland.
Yep. Cuyahoga County.
Yeah, and there's a plaque. It's actually planted at the lagoon, around the perimeter, closer to the Domebrook side. It's in the same area, yeah. And we've been watering it every week.
Good.
Yeah, it's doing well.
Well, we're happy to have that commemorative tree here in our backyard.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Well,
We have time for any questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Matt?
Well, if we don't have any questions, I would love to go ahead and move the agenda on to our next line item. We had Commissioner Tom Schreiber raise something to us that we thought would be really great for us to talk about with the whole body. He reached out to us via email last week, inquiring about codified process for subcommittees. And I know that now that we've had a few months of subcommittees underneath our belt, one of the things that we want to make sure that we're constantly doing is codifying process so that it's clear and transparent as to what each subcommittee is to function as. And we've even talked about the idea of each subcommittee and create a framework for each subcommittee to develop their own charter of function. And so one of the things that we wanted to just elevate today is at least our initial guidance of how subcommittees are to function. And so the first and foremost, there are 3 standing committees. Each standing committee has a chair, and then the chair usually designates someone who will operate as a secretary or note taker for that particular session. UFC committee of the U.S. Forest Service on Monday. UFC committees meet internally as kind of like sub-bodies of Urban Forestry Commission. We do have a guidance for non-commissioned members to participate in the interim. I know that has been of great interest, specifically from our representatives from the public. But we typically invite non-commissioned members to represent some type of research or best practice, subject matter expertise. They are considered non-voting members and can be invited to provide some type of supplemental knowledge or ad hoc or on a regular basis as determined by the vote of those subcommittee members. And then non-voting members offer objective information relevant to the topic being discussed for consideration by members of the committee. Can we go to the next one? So we wanted to outline a little bit about the committee makeup. So as we discussed during our initial kickoff of subcommittees, each committee is comprised of members from the bodies of the whole. Less than 8 commission members as standing members. Each commissioner is a member of one committee. That is a requirement. And then committee member responsibilities are recommend the committees create a charter. So one of the things that we talked about is creating, again, continued codified process in the idea that all of us at some point or another are going to transition off of the commission, and creating an opportunity for those who look to join us. We have 2 vacancies right now that we're getting ready to fill. We want to make sure that we have a proper on-ramp for them to understand the process and function of subcommittee. And so the charter exercise that we're looking to implement is basically outlining active members and what their responsibilities are, and then what their responsibility is as a collective, as a subcommittee. And one of the other processes that we also have created, and thank you so much to Secretary Surrender who manages and checks this very often, is we have a Google Drive that we have shared with each subcommittee chair, where you can provide notes and agendas for that subcommittee meeting. As many of you all know, our subcommittee meetings are also subject to public notice. So you are required to submit to us 7 days in advance as the executive committee, so that we can make public notice that the subcommittee is taking place. Yep, there we go. So I talked a little bit about that. So meeting notice 1 week in advance must be posted 12 hours before by the Office of Sustainability. There is a requirement for a virtual option, unless it's something like a neighborhood walkabout. But we are now in accordance with other subcommittee processes there, and because the city of Cleveland kind of has that policy within, there is a virtual requirement option. So we wanted to highlight that today. And then during the committee chair calls the meeting to order. Committee chair takes notes during the meeting or designates, as I mentioned, another committee member to take notes. Committee chair also takes attendance during that meeting for designated committee members. And then they also make note of those who are participating ad hoc from the public. And then if members of the public are in attendance, committee members introduce themselves and chairs welcome those who attend. And then after the meeting, note takers ensure the completed notes and record of attendance are in that Google folder that I mentioned, just so we can keep track and also have a sense of transparency across the subcommittees. And then provide UFC Executive Committee with updates of accomplishments as complete. Are there any questions about this process? And again, as I mentioned these processes, I don't want any of you all to ever think that this is a final. We are here to provide revisions to what we are proposing as an executive committee. So if there's something as a part of this process that you think would be refined or tweaked or added, we would love to do that today.
Chairman, just a comment. This is really helpful guidance, and I know that this will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting, but could these slides be shared out as well, just so the chairs can begin to operationalize the recommendations?
We plan to follow this up with email to the committee of the whole, so you will have this process codified. And then also, the executive committee is going to meet over the next month, so we can kind of begin thinking about creating this framework for the subcommittee charter. Because we want to be able to provide you all with a template that then you could then internally work and create.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
And this guidance is with the follow-up pressure you mentioned in Excel format, and has spreadsheets for each of the committees to provide the information in advance about the meetings for those.
Are there any other questions about subcommittee guidance? I thought this
I
was a
realized I
perfect
had one more question.
Yes.
Chairman, I think that the committees have been on their own, keeping to a pretty regular pace of meetings and schedule.
Yeah.
If there, I think the intent would be for subcommittees to meet at least one time in between quarterly meetings. But if we formalize that recommendation, or is that, I think that we've been doing it.
Yeah.
We're here to do the work.
Yeah.
But I think that's an interesting question of whether that's formalized, that committees
Yeah.
shall meet at least once between each quarter.
I think that's definitely something that
Something
we
to
can make
think about.
recommendation as our own internal codified process. As it stands right now with existing rules and regulations, there's a lot of ambiguity around that.
Right.
But that also gives us a lot of room and flexibility to create our own process. So we can definitely add that to our notes of opportunity for revision to make sure that there is at least a requirement that subcommittees meet one time.
Or recommendation.
A recommendation, exactly.
Just something to.
Yeah, even though most of our subcommittees have been all of our subcommittees have been very diligent in meeting frequent times in these quarterly sessions. Right? Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna add that I think we could use our current rules of order that we voted on at our first meeting, and then maybe do like an amendment specific to
Yep.
the committee frequency.
Absolutely.
That might be a good place for it.
Yeah, I think that was also both the beauty and intentionality of like the vagueness in the language around subcommittees, and so that we can then go and develop our own process. So all of this feedback is really helpful. Thank you. All right. Well, now that I have provided a little bit of context on committee guidance, I welcome our subcommittee chairs to give a report out, of course, starting with Dan Lehman. I would like to make note that Commissioner Schreiber was unable to attend this afternoon. So Commissioner Spencer will be providing a brief update on policy committee on his behalf, as well as an update on budget committee.
Great. Do you want to start with maintenance committee?
Yeah, we start
Okay.
with maintenance committee.
All right.
Commissioner Lehman, did you want to kick off?
Want to start with me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we did meet during the quarter. I will tell you that we have not been following a formalized process like this. So any information you can share with me so we can become more formalized and better at what we do would be certainly appreciated. When we did meet, we honestly discussed what our next steps would be. And there was a fair amount of discussion regarding that. And as a committee, in terms of maintenance, it's very broad. And that's a kind of a blessing and a curse to some extent. So like, for instance, we've gone on some walkabouts, hear the voice of the community, we found value in that. The question also became, well, should we do more of that, or should we do less of that? We want to continue doing it. So the consensus was still there's value in it, probably scale it back a little bit. We also discussed the value of young tree maintenance, and certainly if we're going to be planting more trees in the future, there's also more value in that. So that was part of our discussion, and also educating the community in terms of there's a lot of tree plantings done either on their own property, and can we share more information on best practices to improve the canopy on their private property. So those are kind of some discussions, and we'll be meeting during the quarter to more formalize what our next steps are.
Thank you so much for that. Commissioner Spencer.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you for both budget and policy.
Thank you. And I'm wondering just procedurally, I know that part of our committee report is related to item F on the agenda, so if you'd like, I can hold
We can hold
on that. Okay. So on that note, I will provide on behalf of Tom Schreiber and myself a report out. He opted to hold a joint meeting of the budget and policy committees, which we don't expect will be a regular occurrence at this time, but given the agenda items, it was beneficial to have both committees together. We met on June 27th, and we did not have a virtual option, so I'm really glad to have clarification about that. That will be the case going forward. But the first hour of the meeting, or 1 hour of the meeting, was a presentation from Kate Warren, who is the Special Assistant to the Chief of Integrated Development. And Kate presented on a new building permit workflow for the city of Cleveland. So we have learned the hard way that urban forestry is not flagged when someone comes in to seek a permit from the city. Urban forestry is often not flagged in a way that allows it to carry out its duties of preserving and protecting the urban forest. So there are a couple of really clear examples that we used during our committee meeting. I think the overarching example of projects that if you go in and pull a permit and would meet the requirements of the tree preservation ordinance. The Marion Seltzer Cadell Commons project is still sort of the example that we're using as a guide stone to work through reforms to that process to make sure that urban forestry is involved much earlier in the process, so that's for larger scale projects. But we had another example, which also happened to be in my ward, although it does take place elsewhere in the city, of a private property owner who had the appropriate zoning to put in a parking lot, very unfortunately at the corner of West 112th and Lake Avenue. And they did have the appropriate zoning. However, the permit also consisted of them adding a curb cut, which a public street tree came down without a permit pulled. So that's another example of a failure in, if you will, in the system where a building permit was applied for, it was passed around to various departments for sign off, did not come to urban forestry for sign off. Therefore, you had a street tree removed without a permit, but yet a permitted project. So the purpose of the meeting with Ms. Warren, it was very, very helpful and very, I thought I walked away very optimistic that the new building permit process, which has been a big effort, big behind the scenes labor to come up with what will be a new proposed policy, will flag items for urban forestry, and you will not experience items slipping through the cracks. I don't know, if Jennifer, if you want to add, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to add anything further, because it was quite, I'm blanking on the name of the consultant, but it's been a big.
Baker Tilly.
Baker Tilly,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councilmember Spencer. Yeah, definitely, like you've highlighted some areas where there's definitely need for improvement. And one of the things that the city's been really working on with Baker Tilly, so two big things happened. So Baker Tilly came in and said, here's some, key, suggestions for how you can improve your permitting process. And of course, Xavier is very well versed on that too, plus with the form-based code. So form-based code also passed, and out of form-based code, the new zoning code, we have a technical review committee. And so the technical review committee is, I sit on the technical review committee, and so that's going to help catch some of tree preservation plans. And Xavier, feel free to just openly jump in if I misspeak. Am I correct so far?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, if the project meets the requirements to be seen by the technical review committee, which you are included on, those types of things should be cut before any type of ground is broken, or even before they get to the permit application process.
Thank you for adding that. So, and then the long-term goal, right? So there's the short term, which is to work very closely with our zoning administrator, Shannon Leonard, and Xavier in planning, just to make sure that if a project meets the requirement that needs a tree preservation plan, that those are flagged before they get flagged in Acela. Acela is the permitting software, and everybody is going to be on that. There's a huge, investment in getting everybody trained up on Acela, including myself in urban forestry. So, and then projects will be flagged through the specific workflows in Acela. And I'll have, sign-offs through all the stages. So I'll be able to query where certain things are. So I'm really looking forward to that as, the long-term solution that I believe the city is adopting. And I believe Kate Warren also did cover that, Councilmember Spencer, when she met with us. So those are I'm very excited about those changes. And then also for the new form-based code advisory committee and just developing those relationships with planning and having those colleagues just understanding.
And in reflection of that discussion, I think one of the optimistic takeaways that I have is the opportunity for us to even provide recommendation to Kate Warren and her team on this kind of like flagging process to make sure that urban forestry is accurately accounted for in this permitting process. So I think as a call to action, as a commission, then also as the subcommittee is the opportunity to weigh in on this recommendation and processes. So I felt very optimistic about not only are there going to be more mechanisms put in place to flag this, but we also get to play a significant role in helping to guide what those recommendations are.
And I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then to the example that Councilmember Spencer brought up about a parking lot went in, so that did not meet the ordinance requirements for a tree preservation plan, right? So, but there ended up being, street tree that was removed, unfortunately. So then how do we make sure that not only in Acela are tree preservation plans flagged, for urban forestry review or commission review, but then how do we make sure that we catch, are there street trees, existing street trees in proximity to your project? Because very likely if you're developing on that site, you are impacting the street tree. The roots, the canopy, something. It's not going unaffected. So then how do we look at how those permits are issued?
And I would just add to that, I thought a really productive part of the discussion was not only looking at the design and design impacts on existing trees, public trees, if it doesn't require a tree preservation plan, but having requirements for tree protections during construction. So
Right.
clear guidelines and protections. So when a project is permitted, that there are clear requirements for tree protection in place during that construction process.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you for that.
it was a
Yeah.
great
That was
discussion.
a great discussion. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to our next steps of being able to come together and make some of those draft recommendations. Absolutely. Thank you. Is that all in both the cost report out on budget and policy?
The other significant item we spent time on is related to item F on the agenda. So would you like me to hold until?
We'll hold
Okay.
until we get to item.
Great.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Spencer, for giving the report out both for budget and policy subcommittee. And so I will now turn it over to Vice Chair Kip, who will give an update on our current vacancy status for
Okay.
Commissioner.
Great, thank you, Chair Malone. So as Chair Malone mentioned earlier, that we have several candidates who are interested in filling the youth position on our team. And we have those interviews scheduled Thursday and Friday this week. So we'd like to be able to put forward our recommendation to the mayor after that. And then our nonprofit, unfortunately, Divya Sridhar is no longer a commission member because her position was discontinued in her organization during a restructuring. So she's absolutely missed. And so we are looking to so it's a nonprofit, that's the role, appointed by council. And so what we did in 2022, when we were first trying to convene the commission as we stand today, was we put out, on social media, an email blast, whatever, the mayor's office of communications, an announcement that we are actively seeking applicants for the Urban Forestry Commission. And then there was an online application. Then all those applications filtered to me. Then I went through them. I conducted the interviews, and then I made recommendations to council and mayor. So that was the process in 2022. And I guess what I'm interested in hearing is, do we want to change that process moving forward? And specifically, would you like, as a commission, do we want to convene and review the interview questions, the application, those types of things? So this is just up for discussion because I'd like to move forward with filling the seats.
Well, I would say I think it's a great exercise of time for us to collectively take a look at our existing application process and our existing interviewing processes, whether that be collectively together or giving folks the time to review and reflect and provide comment via email. But I do think it's a really great exercise of time, especially since having kicked off Urban Forestry Commission in 2022, now we're officially past our year mark. I think it's really great to take a look at our existing process as we prepare to welcome 2 new commissioners on to make sure that not only are we allowing opportunity for the best candidates, of course, to fill this slot. But also, we just have a streamlined process that is both helpful and efficient for commission members to get a bird's eye view of who this potential person is, and for them to also have a easy onboarding process and easy selection process. So I just like to throw that out to the commission. I think it's a good exercise of time for us to all reflect and take a look at our existing process for selection.
May I ask, is the first step though is putting out a call for applicants? I would imagine we want that, that part would remain the same, putting out, or are you talking about modifying the actual application? Okay.
Yeah, so the existing application is still the formal one that we use for the initial inception of commission. If we all still feel that it functions and is a good application to put forward and have folks respond to, then we can absolutely keep it as is, but we love the opportunity to get feedback because many of us didn't get a chance to give feedback on it because we were also simultaneously filling out the applications to be members. So I think having that perspective of now commission members giving reflection and feedback on the application process is helpful.
Do you think, Chair, or go ahead? Did you have something you wanted to add, Jose?
Perhaps you can share the application
Yeah.
and with a deadline.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
submit comments by whatever date.
Right. Good.
You know, and then I really propose maybe the executive committee, then handles it from there.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Fantastic. So we will definitely, as a follow-up to this, make sure that we share out with you the existing application materials. And like you said, set a deadline for folks to give comment and feedback. And then we'll move forward with the soliciting and interviewing process.
Okay. And I'm happy, I'll just say I'll take ownership of sharing that out because I did the initial 2022 round. So I have that application and the interview questions on my computer. So I just want to say I own that task and we'll share it out to the commission. And what do we think is an appropriate time frame for turnaround or comments? 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's 2 weeks.
All right. Well,
All right.
no, 2 weeks. We will.
Everyone was nodding too easily. 1 week. Let's see. Okay. 2 weeks it is.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Kip, on that update on current vacancies. Do we have any other comments before I transition to our next line? Well, I'm itching and excited to get to this one, and I'm actually going to queue up.
I keep reading that.
I'm so used to not operating.
There's some passion fruit recipes, but the internet really wants me to make something with passion fruit.
So we're really excited to introduce this new opportunity, and I'm going to actually queue up Commissioner Spencer, who will provide far more context than I will. But just to give a little bit of framing, the BIM administration introduced Ordinance 521-2024, which would create a separate Department of Parks and Recs for the City of Cleveland. Currently Parks and Recs is housed within the Department of Public Works. And with this potential, there is an opportunity for urban forestry currently underneath the Division of Parks and Properties to potentially be proposed underneath the new Department of Parks and Recreation. So without further ado, and I'm going to go ahead and transition over to Commissioner Spencer to provide even more depth and context about this ordinance potential.
Great, thank you very much, Chair Malone. And there was an email sent out to commissioners about a week ago just to give a heads up about the discussion we're hoping to have today. With Executive Committee's permission, I think what I want to put forth is that the Commission consider taking a formal action today, and that when we conclude the discussion of this topic, that we consider making a motion to support. And I will explain what that particular motion might consist of. But this is really an opportunity for us as a body to, this is actually pursuant to, in our rules and regulations, pursuant to Article 6, which is under the duties of the Commission, includes providing recommendations on policy, plans, programs, or legislation concerning urban forestry management, sustainability, and protection of associated trees on public or private properties. This is really falls within the purview of the Commission, and this is, I'll editorialize by saying this is a very exciting piece of legislation. So I'd like to proceed to explain it, take a couple minutes to explain it, take a couple minutes to explain the amendment, and then open it up for discussion for consideration of action by the Commission. So As Chair Malone stated, tomorrow there is a hearing on Ordinance 521-2024. It was introduced in the spring. Those of you who follow Cleveland City Council knows that during summer, Council has 2 full-day sessions. We meet 1 full day in July, 1 full day in August. Our full-day session for July is tomorrow, Wednesday, July 10th. And we will be beginning at 9 a.m. and hearing a large suite of legislation tomorrow. But this is an extremely important piece of legislation. It was introduced by the Bibb administration, and 521-2024 itself seeks to create a separate Department of Parks and Recreation. So as the email detailed a little bit, currently we have a very large Department of Public Works, and Parks and Recreation has rolled up under Public Works, as has Parks, Maintenance, and Properties rolled up under Public Works, and Urban Forestry is embedded even further underneath Parks, Maintenance, and Properties. And so from so just to clarify 521-2024, what the Bibb administration is proposing is separating Parks and Recreation from Public Works. And a lot of the discussion tomorrow will be focusing on which divisions stay with Public Works, which divisions would move over to Parks and Recreation. So there is an amendment that is also going to be proposed tomorrow that was worked on collaboratively between Council and the Bibb administration. So it is supported by both. It is not a surprise amendment coming to the table tomorrow, but that amendment would be amending 521-2024 further. And what the amendment would seek to achieve is to create a separate division of urban forestry. And that would mean there would be a new commissioner of urban forestry, and that urban forestry would no longer report to the commissioner of Parks, Maintenance, and Properties. It would be its own division with its own commissioner. And I want to take a couple moments to explain the significance of this. First of all, I know we've discussed it at length in budget committee meetings. Currently, when the administration sets forth a general fund operating budget for the city of Cleveland, there is no way to view urban forestry's budget as a standalone budget. We can only consider Parks, Maintenance, and Properties budget, and urban forestry is not presented separately. So there has been a lack of ability to ascertain whether urban forestry has the resources it needs, at what level we are funding it. We've never had that open discussion during budget hearings. Very specific. We've been able to discuss high level about staffing and other questions related to urban forestry, but we've never been able to have a true snapshot of to what degree is the city of Cleveland funding its urban forestry operations. So the creation of a separate division forces the hand, if you will, of that budgetary process. There will be a lot more transparency. We will have a very clear understanding and view of, are we funding it? Are we underfunding urban forestry? And that discussion will be able to take place, I think, in a very productive way. And I really want to applaud Jennifer's colleagues within Parks, Maintenance, and Properties, the commissioner, as well as the Assistant Director of Public Works and Director of Public Works, who were very helpful in talking through, this is a big deal. Creating a division it touches many, many different parts of the code. For those of you who had a chance to look through the amendment, you'll see it's incredibly lengthy. And that is because anytime you create a new commissioner position, a new division, it touches many, many different parts of the code. So this decision was not taken lightly. I think everyone acknowledges that it will be, presuming that 521-2024 as a whole passes tomorrow, and then the amendment is also approved by council. This would be effective starting, in this next upcoming budget cycle. So for our 2025 general operating budget, we would be considering urban forestry as a standalone division. And that'll be a lot of work. So I'm looking over at Jennifer. I mean, this is it'll be a tremendous amount of work, I think, well worth the effort to to really make sure that we continue to elevate urban forestry as a priority for the city, which is in alignment with all of our stated values that we have as a commission, our tree plan for the city. So it really achieves all of that. One other piece I will, however, I wanted to add, I think, we can anticipate this is the first time urban forestry has developed its own budget. There'll be a learning curve, and I look forward as a commission to supporting that process, to being present for it. I think the budget committee will be very active on that. And also, as a side note, if any of you who are not on the budget committee would wish to join, there's room. We did lose a couple of commissioners with Sarah O'Keefe leaving the commission, as well as Divya Sridhar. So if anyone would like to get involved more in depth in these discussions, you're welcome to join us on the budget committee. One other really important thing to highlight with 521-2024 is that the amendment is that it is proposed that urban forestry would be under the new Department of Parks and Recreation. So there was discussion about, should urban forestry be its own division under Public Works, or should it be a separate division under Parks and Recreation? And there was really, I thought, very productive dialogue about that. It is most common in peer cities across the country for urban forestry to be under Parks and Recreation. It's also important to acknowledge that there will be a lot of change. The city would be hiring a new director of Parks and Recreation. So urban forestry would be, very exciting, but a lot of change. Would be potentially its own division under a brand new Department of Parks and Recreation with a brand new director, new commissioner. A lot of change to manage, but I think really, really promising and really exciting. One of the points that was made about why to keep urban forestry, or why to have a division of urban forestry under Parks and Recreation, in addition to that being what most peer cities have, is for grant seeking purposes, having that alignment with a vision around parks and green space. So that is where we landed. So I invite this commission to have discussion on this topic. And if the commission desires, I would very much like to come to the Cleveland City Council meeting tomorrow, being able to express that the Urban Forestry Commission took action on this question and made a recommendation. So I invite the commission to ask any questions or have dialogue and discuss whether we would like to make a formal recommendation.
Well, before we go into formal deliberation, I would like to just add the excitement that you've expressed around this opportunity of forestry being elevated to its own division, and even the opportunity for parks and recreation to be pulled out, and having that strategic alignment between forestry and parks and rec. I think is going to be an invaluable add to our city administration. And one of the things I'm most excited about, of course, is the divisional autonomy that forestry will now have. And really elevating the importance and value of urban forestry in this administration. This is truly codifying it. So I want to keep that in mind as we're having this discussion. And Councilwoman Spencer, maybe if you want to speak to, I know you mentioned one of the things that, of course, intrigued me is the budgetary opportunities as well as the grant-seeking opportunities. Do you maybe want to elaborate a little bit more about the potential of forestry being acknowledged as a division now, and how that can provide a mixed asset in both its own itemized budgetary implications as well as future opportunities to pursue these larger grant funds, much like what we just received from the U.S. Forest Service.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Malone, and I would welcome Jennifer to chime in as well. But I think having a standalone division could potentially make us more competitive for grant-seeking opportunities. We can offer a clear kind of leadership for that task. I think there would be the desire to have ongoing partnerships with sustainability and other parts of the administration. But I think that it would potentially position us to be more competitive to seek and receive grants. But I think that the other piece is that it's important to remember, and budget committee members know this very well, that there is not typically just one source of funding for urban forestry. It receives general fund dollars for operations, primarily staffing, some equipment, things like that. It has received some capital dollars in the past, but those are extremely restricted and cannot be used for many of the needed activities of what we hope will be the division of urban forestry, and then to some degree block grant funding. So there is a big funding piece, but what this would do specifically, a big funding picture rather, but what this would do specifically is within those general fund budget hearings is the commissioner of urban forestry would be able to present their staffing levels, whether that is deemed adequate, whether additional funding is being requested, and really open up the discussion too about how for example, the limitations on things like the bond funding, the capital dollars, and how do we. I think it'll make the general fund budgeting process much more transparent in a way that is beneficial to urban forestry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for providing that feedback.
I think if I may also, it also opens the division of forestry to the public. Right now it's just like it was said, it's buried under, the department and two departments essentially. The budget hearings are public.
Right.
And that
right.
discussion for urban forestry will be held in public. How does the citizens of the city of Cleveland, feel about their urban forest? And where, so I'm glad to see that. I'm excited. I'm happy to be a member of the budget committee and to assist in any way I can to make this happen. And it seemed to me like the normal course of affairs here, from the creation of this commission, the resurgence of it, to now the rebirth of what used to be a division of urban forestry in the city of Cleveland. This is not the first one.
Right.
There used to be one, now that disappeared over time, and now we see a resurgence of the emphasis on forestry that the city of Cleveland always had, and that just unfortunately went away for a while, and now it's coming back. So I'm happy to see that.
Thank you so much.
I've been with.
Do any of our other
No.
commissioners want to provide comment or feedback on what Commissioner Spencer is providing?
Well, I would invite the committee, if you are so inclined, the commission rather, if you are so inclined to, or I can make the motion myself. I believe I can.
Yes, you can.
Okay. So I would make a motion to have the Urban Forestry Commission offer its support for the amendments to Ordinance 521-2024, which would establish urban forestry as a standalone division.
I'd like to second the motion.
Take note of that.
Any discussion on
Secretaries Thank you.
any discussion on the motion?
All in favor say,
Oh,
all in favor say aye.
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 I just want to say for the record that as the urban forestry manager, I'm recusing myself from the vote. So if you could please, secretaries around put me in as a recusal on this vote. Thank you.
well, thank you so much, Commissioner Spencer, you provided that very, sorry.
Oh,
All
sorry.
opposed say nay.
All, I heard I.
The motion has passed.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Spencer, for providing that really comprehensive overview. I'm really excited about this opportunity. We'll be keeping my fingers crossed about the opportunity of this ordinance not only being passed, but the amendment also being made, so we can move forward. Have the section of forestry restored back to the division, which will unlock now unlimited opportunities for us.
Exactly. I will keep everyone updated tomorrow. So I'll be up. We'll be waiting for some hopefully good news. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
All right. Well, with 15 minutes left, I want to make sure that we reserve enough time for public comment. And so before we transition into our space for public comment, do we have a sign in for the public comment?
It's ready.
Fantastic.
Do we want to take the in-person comments first?
We'll take the in-person comments first, but I just want to read public comment policy before I move forward. So all meetings of the city of Cleveland are open to the public. Members of the public shall always conduct themselves appropriately and are prohibited from engaging in conduct that is disruptive, distracting, that substantially and unreasonably interferes with the business of commission and the safety or orderly use, operation, or administration of chambers. All speakers must pre-register. Any person wishing to participate in public comment portion of the regular commission meeting shall register using the registration form made available and provide the following information: name, ward, or city of residency, phone number, email address, and topic interested in discussion or providing comment on. And so, if there are any persons needing assistance or seeking a reasonable accommodations for disability or language assistance, the request is required at least 3 business days in advance. And so, in terms of public information, all registered information is considered public record. Emails, phone numbers may be subject to disclose as public record. All speaking comments made during commission meetings are also subject to public record. And just as a note of speaking, speakers shall only address the topic they registered to speak as they stated on their registration form. Speakers shall not use indecent or discriminatory language. Speakers shall address the commission as a body and may not address any individual commission member. And speakers shall not engage in electioneering for any candidate or specific ballot issue. All right, well, I would like to move forward with first recognizing our, we only have one comment, right? Okay, you have one public comment and in person, and we have that from Neil Mahoney. And so I ask you to step forward and provide your public comment.
Hi, my name is Neil Mahoney. Mahoney. Like the song Mahoney. Yeah. Been a City of Cleveland resident my whole life. It's wonderful that the Urban Forestry Prohibition is coming back. And I hope Amy Poehler's available, for the position, because Leslie managed to get her. But I'll get you aside. I just want to address something. It's reading through the entire for the agenda and everything what Cleveland Trees is about. I noticed that there was a lot of pushback from people that didn't want trees on their, street trees, on their tree lawns, things like that. And one of the things I found was that people didn't want to take care of them. And they just thought, well, the city does that. The city does that. So I live in Ward 17, and when you walk some of our streets, you couldn't basically get through the streets. The tree canopies were so low that nobody was maintaining them. So I took it upon myself in 2022 to start doing my neighborhood, just a few streets in my neighborhood. And I did reach out to the Urban Forestry office to let them know what I was doing. Only because as you're trying to walk down the street, street trees are hitting, they're in your face. There's 3 feet of clearance to get by. So I started just taking it upon myself. But I did get into some resistance from one neighbor. He said, why are you doing this? And I said, well, I said people are trying to get by. It's fortunate on the street, on their lawns. But I just wanted to see where the Urban Department of Forestry, gets out into the neighborhoods to really let people know, that they, need to maintain their trees, and more just public education about, their responsibilities. And unfortunately, the person that gave me pushback when I talked to his neighbors and said, this guy's just doing it on his own. They said, don't touch our trees, don't touch our trees. And I said, well, I asked them if they would please, trim their trees. It's just hard for people to walk. And then just a couple of the issues that everyone's been talking about, the preservation of the existing trees that we do have. There are so many trees in Ward 17, they are being overtaken by some invasive species, winter creeper, ivy, are starting to take over, old oak trees. And I just wanted to bring that to the Urban Forestry's attention and to get people out there to let them know, what's going on. So, that was basically my comments on it. And really how to get people in the city to realize, the value of your tree and to maintain it. As you guys did mention, people on their, the private trees on their private yards, still people they need help. They need more information. My next door neighbor was mulching his yard, and he asked if I could help as some guidance on. He's only been in the house about 4 years, and unfortunately, on his 2 oak trees on his tree lawn, they were putting mulch volcanoes on the trees, and we're talking about 10 inches of mulch up the tree, which is, very detrimental to the trees. So we excavated all that, we brought the root flare down, things like that. But there's so many people that just don't understand, what needs to be done with the trees. But I think that, urban forestry has been a godsend for our city. So I hope to see more, just more public relations, more information going out to neighbors, mailers, anything like that, on how to take care of the trees.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your public comment. We greatly appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mona.
And then we also have one other public comment that was submitted online. It actually was submitted for our last session, but they did not meet the cutoff time to be included. So I wanted to make sure that we cover that during today's session. And the comment is from, my computer's freezing a little bit, from Chrissy Wells, who lives in Ward 3. Dear commission members, on Monday, March 18th, there were orange signs indicating tree work was to be done around my house beginning on March 19th. I emailed Jennifer Kipp for clarification if the tree work involved tree trimming, or if the tree work involved tree trimming or removal. Her response, our contractor has tree removals in Ward 3 if that helps. Sadly, the next day, I sat at work and watched the removal of a large elm tree and one of the largest trees on our street from our neighbor's tree lawn through my video doorbell. A few years ago, I lived somewhere else in Ward 3 and saw the same signs. A tree crew had come to remove a mature London plane from my street. My neighbor and I stood under the tree so the crew could not cut it down while I called Councilman McCormick, who said who called Miss Kipp. Miss Kipp came in person and determined the tree was healthy and the sidewalk could be curved and the tree roots could be curved around the tree roots in order to save the tree. The tree was saved because I was lucky to have social capital, a council person's cell phone, and a council person willing to answer my call and follow up with the city. The time, the willingness to stand outside and advocate for the tree. Residents deserve notification and information about when and where our tree lawn trees are removed. It is devastating to come home from a day of work and find that our beloved tree is gone. Not only should there be a notification system, there should also be an appeal process. The plane tree was saved purely because of the fortuitous circumstances. How many other trees have needlessly or mistakenly been removed in our city? I acknowledge that this adds administrative burdens and this should be addressed, and that should be addressed. However, as the commission well knows, Cleveland is far behind in tree plan goals and losing ground every year. Decisions about mature tree removal should be taken very seriously, and there should be multiple touch points at which relevant stakeholders can provide input to ensure mature trees are not removed unnecessarily. When a tree does indeed need to be removed, this should be clearly communicated to residents ahead of time. The commission should take steps to address the policy issue. Thank you. And I would like to thank Chrissy Wells for her public comment, which is now part of public record.
Does that conclude the public comment portion?
Was there an additional one? Oh, there is one additional one. I saw.
No, this is just as the attending in person, but we don't have that individual on our sign-in sheet. Yeah.
I have one more thing, which actually happened today as I was coming down. I saw a neighbor trying to pull the branches from a tree that just got hit into one of the tree lawn trees. And it was the garbage collection truck that broke the limb and the caliber probably a 4-inch limb. And unfortunately, she said she's been a resident for about 50 years. She saw the tree going. She saw the sidewalk get replaced. They chopped the tree roots. The tree started to go in decline. And now she said over the last couple of weeks, she's already lost 4 branches, including today this massive branch that the city workers do, that the garbage truck had hit. And I think that's, again, too, and I've seen that on my street, on my Edgecliff, and we've maintained our oak trees so that, the public works can get by and get things done. But there's a lot of times where they, I don't think they just, I know everyone's in a hurry to get their job done during the day, but, take the extra time to move that garbage can out of the way instead of driving into and breaking out the tree. So, again, it could be something that should be addressed with city employees as well.
Thank you, Mr. Monk.
Okay, with that being the conclusion of our public comment section, I would like to move us along to closing remarks. So as I started off the meeting by saying thank you so much to our commissioners for being present and active in today's session, I think that we had a few very exciting takeaways from this meeting, both with this significant and exciting news about the U.S. Forest Service funding, and then even the potential opportunity of introducing codified ordinance that even helps to further catalyze the vision that we have for urban forestry to be elevated from a section to a division. And so that brings me a great deal of joy, and then also just signifies all of the collective work that both commissioners and all of the administrative supporters and advocates that are helping to constantly ensure that we are moving the needle on accomplishing goals that we've set for ourselves as a commission. I think this U.S. Forest Service funding is going to be an amazing opportunity for us to accomplish some of the things that we've outlined in terms of being able to support the function and the thriving function of the section of forestry, which we are keeping our fingers crossed is so important. So with that being said, I would like to officially make a motion to call this meeting to adjourn. And I have someone second that motion.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Malone. Thank you, everybody.